Super. Welcome, everybody. We were just rolling the trailer, I think, for the festival, and we can get started as we welcome everybody in to this conversation. Great to be with you all today, both here in person or in the Zoom room, and online as well, and to those catching up afterwards. It's really great to be able to facilitate this conversation today. So my name's Ed Stevenette. I'm part of the Learning Planet Institute team that has also been working hard putting together the Learning Planet Festival, which, as you'll each know, is running over the course of this whole week. So over 500 events across the world, exploring learning to take care of oneself, others, and the planet. It's an amazing roller coaster. And notably, we have a series of sessions looking at transitions in higher education across in-person conferences here in Paris with alliances for sustainability, looking at higher education and well-being as well in the US. There are so much to explore, and we'll be sharing some links so that you can touch base and check. I think I was unmuted then. There we go. But it is great to be with you all today, and we will get started very, very shortly. Gail, can you just confirm, was I on mute that whole time when I was speaking? No, we're good. Okay, we're good. Fantastic. There we go. So as we admit in the final couple of people, just to give a quick bit of housekeeping, and then I'll pass the floor to Gael and the co-leads of this circle. Today will be really geared towards hearing inspirations, case studies around transitioning higher education for planetary health, which is what we've really been working on and exploring in this circle. Throughout the session, there won't be visuals. It will be very much interactive, and there'll be regular dialogue between the invited speakers and the co-leads of the circle. But we really encourage you as well to contribute, firstly via the chat, introduce yourself, where you're calling from. Also, don't hesitate to leave questions there as well, any comments or thoughts that come to mind. And after each presentation, there will be a chance to also possibly ask your questions if you do have a burning one to share with the speakers. So please do contribute, and at the end there'll be at least 20 minutes of some open discussion where we should get as many of your voices in as possible. But with all that being said, we'll give the floor first to Gail to give a bit more of an idea of the flow of this session and the circle. Over to you, Gail.
Well, thank you very much, Ed. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good night. I don't know where, and there's a lot of people coming from different places. It's a new format for us, so maybe a little bit of a two main message. One is what we are trying to do with this session, in terms of format and role. As we all know, universities have to change radically, and they could be the place to transform the world, because that's the place where all the knowledge is, or a lot of knowledge is co-created with the students, passed on with the students. So it's a good, they could be the engineer of the future, the engines of the future. Unfortunately, they are trapped into all kinds of problems due to history, contingency, etc. So what we would like to do here in these sort of sessions is to hear from amazing pioneers that have been able to transform the universities in a way that they now align much better with what the students need, what the teacher needs, and what the planet needs. And so, in a way, if we go back to the three key missions of the university: doing research, teaching, and being useful to society, I think it's another way to present it, which is, how do we transform those universities so that they better serve the students, the teacher, the staff, the admin staff, but also their local community, their territory, and more generally the planet. And so that's about the goal, is to how to exchange information about that. And in terms of format, what we thought would be nice this time, and if it works, we would have other sessions, and it really depends on us together to see what we can do, is instead of having a few people selected to present how they perform on X and Y, because we are all used to sell our own story. We thought it would be interesting to do the other way around and to have people that present what they like in other places, in other work, so that we see that through the eyes of the people that have been inspired. Right? So we will have a series of 3 inspirations where Alan, Brian, and I will uh, present 3 different universities and representative of universities that through our eyes of what we find inspiring in what they're doing. And that would be 5 minutes just to have the conversation starting, and after that maybe we kick start out with our own questions, and then please in the audience you can also fire questions in the chat that must be as interactive as possible so that we can all learn and try to see and maybe establish collaboration on how to develop this and that and the other. The idea is to get a maximum of inspiration. It's the festival. We are here to learn and also get energy. So yeah, that's the 2 main things that I wanted to say about the intention and about the format. And so, Alan, whenever you feel like introducing how ASU is just an amazing university, you have the floor.
Great, thanks, Gail. Good to be with you all today. Great to see quite a lot of familiar faces from the series of conversations that we've been having, and obviously brilliant to see some new faces. So just very briefly, there has been a series of conversations talking about how universities can be part of the vital changes that we need to see in the world, you know, and how there is incredible knowledge and resource locked up in universities, but how what we've been discussing is how that often isn't put to best use. And some of the things that we've talked about have been the silos, the structures, the schools, the colleges, the subjects, the disciplines, many of which were defined centuries ago. And when we arrive at a time in history where we are facing so many crises, climate crisis, mass biodiversity loss, obscene inequality and inequity, just to name a few, we are aware that we need many different perspectives, many different ways of knowing to come together to try and resolve those problems. Our institutions aren't set up to support that. So that's what we've been discussing, how we need to make these changes. So I just want to say a few things about Arizona State University, because this, over the last, I don't know, 10 years for me, Arizona State just kept coming up as a place that I was being directed to. And there were a number of reasons. And so I just want to say a few things about what made me excited about ASU and what suggested to me that this was a kind of institution that was making the kind of changes that we needed to see and really redirecting what it was, redirecting its imagination, its resources, its intellect to help engage and solve some of the great challenges of our time. So brief history, if you don't know Arizona State, and I'm not the expert really, but I'm giving you my impression, and then I'll ask Minu to respond and maybe correct and add detail from her perspective at the heart of the institution. So, what I'm aware of is that Michael Crow became president 20 years ago. And at the time, universities are measured in various ways, but one of the metrics used is the points that, and they're calculated in different ways in different countries, but what you need to get into the university. To get into Arizona State, it was more or less the lowest point score that you required. So many would have looked at it as a kind of low-level university. I'm being deliberately a bit blunt there because I want to talk about the transformation. But first of all, just to talk about how Michael Crow and the senior team decided that that would be the badge of honor, that they would be open to all. And they wouldn't be measured by how people entered the university, but upon by completion and attainment. So lots of universities do this, but really to make it a principal measure, a principal metric for how well the university was doing. So really to be incredibly inclusive. So that's one of the key things that started out 20 years ago and is absolutely at the heart of the mission of the institution today. Another thing that just amazed me, I work across a lot of different fields, and I'm often looking for real leaders in the fields that I'm engaged in. And very often I was finding that these people were being drawn to ASU, they were being hired. And it was a key principle, again, that we've seen over a number of years at ASU, seeing major players in various disciplines drawn to the university, basically driven by, Minu and I were talking the other day about practical wisdom, and an ancient idea from Aristotle, phronesis, forms of learning that are really based on practice. And what was clear was that ASU was scanning the horizon and saying, who's doing remarkable work? How can we bring them into the university? So not reaching for the usual academic players, but really thinking about who's making a difference in the world. So that was a key hiring policy, and it's driven innovation in the university. I think it is a remarkable result, partly based on that strategy, that ASU for the last 8 years has been #1 in universities in innovation in the US. So an incredible record. Talking about silos and disciplinarity as against joined up ways of thinking, we'll ask Minu to talk a bit about this in a little while. But ASU starts schools quicker than most universities start degree programs. So instead of thinking, there's a challenge in the world, how do we engage with it? How do we get someone in a school, in a system, school in a faculty, with all of the subjects and the disciplines aligned as they have been for decades or even centuries? ASU flips that completely and says, what's the problem? How do we engage with it? And then invents a school, sometimes within a year or not much more, to really design an institution to engage with the problem rather than doing it the other way around. So it's an incredible agility, really, for a very, very big institution, and the kind of thing we don't see in other institutions. So this commitment to being open for all, drawing in wisdom and practical experience from whatever field is required to engage with a major challenge, really driving forward innovation. These are some of the hallmarks. I think another thing that we've talked about in the circle is how schools preparing people for university are also setting patterns in motion which have to be undone. And it's, certainly a thing that pains me that at every stage in most educational systems, the pupils and the students have revealed to them that what they've been studying isn't the whole story. In fact, some of the fundamental pillars of their education have to be undone and rebuilt. So what Arizona State is doing is really actively engaging with the school system and really trying to reinvent that, so that really they're taking a whole systems approach, engaging with schools, doing what they can to fundamentally rethink the institution and develop the agility to engage with major challenges, and then going out and finding out what those challenges are and putting the institution, the students, the staff, the resources to work to solve the problems. So I think it's a remarkable institution. There are some things I'd love to hear more about, because this is an outsider's perspective. One of the things is that there is a charter that describes what ASU is all about. And, I know that, again, many institutions will say, we have a charter, we are committed to interdisciplinarity, we're committed to engaging with great problems in the world. So what's the difference? So I'd love to find out more, really, how ASU is living this. And one of the key questions I have is, how is the charter a part of the everyday, so that students and staff and everybody involved with the university really lives that charter? I run a relatively small organization with 450 staff. Compared to ASU, I have no idea, thousands and thousands. But I know the difference when you get everybody working, really committed to the same values, to the same direction. It's transformational. How does ASU do that? Minu, I'd love to bring you in. That's my first question. I've got a few more, but can you speak to some of that, but particularly start with that charter question?
Happy to do that, Alan, and good to be with you all. ASU's charter is what we think of as our North Star. It has 3 fundamental components. We start with the idea that, and Alan referenced this in his comments, that we want to be known for whom we include and how they succeed. So really setting ourselves out to be anti-elitist in our approach to education. We want to provide access to as many people as possible because we believe that as a public institution, that is a key responsibility we have to society. The second aspect of our charter speaks to research and discovery of public value, which means that we recognize that the tremendous intellect of the faculty and others who are doing research here are producing incredible amounts of knowledge. But how do we as an institution prioritize channeling that knowledge to actually solving society's problems? Now, that doesn't mean that we don't invest in and care about basic and fundamental research. We do, but yet how do we then take the knowledge we produce and get it out into the hands of those that can actually do something with it? And then the third element of our charter talks about taking fundamental responsibility for the economic, cultural, social, and health of the communities we serve, which is a really bold statement if you think about it. Because this is saying that we are not sort of having these boundaries around us as an institution, and we will do certain things internally and we are not connected to the world. This is saying we take responsibility for what is going on in the communities that we serve, which means that we now don't have boundaries into the external world. We are engaged in and embracing the challenges that these communities have, and we are part of leading the solution. So what is in the charter, Alan, to your question, is important, is crafting a direction for the institution. So the charter is as relevant today as it was 20 years ago when these ideas were framed. They are not goals, they are not specific targets we are trying to reach, but they are aspirational statements that allow all of us who work here to have some shared sense of who we are as an institution and where we are going. Then there is the question of, once you have a charter, once you've articulated this vision of where the institution is going, how do you ensure that everybody buys in and is connected and emotionally engaged? Different things. So there is, at the deepest level of the institution, is directing resources and making bold decisions in order to advance the ideals of our charter. So it may be investing in a large interdisciplinary entity because we believe that research and discovery should lead to social value. It is in figuring out how we moved from a 50,000 plus student organization to over 140,000 students and many, many other learners. It's rethinking the institution in order to shape value one of our charter. So it's making those bold decisions and investments and a relentless focus on what those items mean. And then, as we all know, communication is key because people are coming in and out of the institution. We are engaging with people who experience us in different ways. We are, and I think led by Dr. Crow, our president, relentless in reminding people about what we're doing. So if you attend internal meetings and internal conversations, there are constant references to the charter. So it's not a static set of ideas that hangs on a wall, beautifully framed as where ASU is going. It's a living, breathing set of words and language that shapes how we think, that shapes how we act, it shapes how we make decisions, it shapes how we invest resources. And it allows for, I think the most wonderful thing about that charter is it allows enterprising faculty, staff, and students to lean into interpreting what those things mean. So you can come up with ideas to say, okay, how am I going to increase access for students and make students successful, or do interesting interdisciplinary research, or have a community engagement, because it opens up a space of possibilities, which then allows us, as you referenced, to be recognized for innovation. But it's not innovation for innovation's sake. It's innovation to meet the ideals of the charter. And why the innovation piece connects with the charter so beautifully is that nothing we've said in the charter is easy. And so the only way to realize what we've said in the charter is to innovate and to fundamentally rethink, reimagine, and redesign. And so North Star provides space for possibility and innovation with sort of constant everyday reminders of why and what we are doing.
Brilliant. Thanks, Minu. So just a follow-up question. I saw that Mary Rose was referencing Xia Jinwei's synthesis lab. Brilliant example of, someone who was co-lead of a school of engineering and a school of art. You don't see that very often, and developed this brilliant synthesis lab. But just, I wanted to ask about the major challenges, planetary health issues that we're looking at today. And I know that you created as an institution the College of Global Futures and various schools in that. I'm aware of brilliant bits of the curriculum where students are engaged in live projects, learning how to engage, participating, contributing in finding solutions to major challenges that speak to planetary health issues. So you've got bits of the curriculum. I've talked about how you actively go out and seek leaders in the field who can speak to this. Can you tell us a bit about how a College of Global Futures comes into existence, how you put the pieces in place, and how you mobilize the resources of the institution really to engage with these planetary health issues?
So the story goes back to 2004 when we launched our School of Sustainability. That's sort of where ASU in some ways was ahead of where everybody else was in recognizing that these are really important issues and that an institution of higher education needs to lean in. So the School of Sustainability was then a structure that allowed for some people to exist within it, but also brought together faculty and others from across the institution, partners from outside. And that allowed us to sort of wrap our heads around what we can do in this space. And then we recognized that that was important, but it was a slice of the problem. And that we really needed to reimagine how we could organize our own resources and mobilize resources from outside to go after these issues in a more comprehensive way. So in 2021, we launched the Julianne Wrigley Global Futures Lab. And the idea of this lab is that it drives the vision of a great future for everyone, the broadest possible way to frame the vision of planetary health. So that now provides a mega container within which we could then start to organize other pieces. So the College of Global Futures that you just referenced now sits within this Global Futures Lab, which is a pan-university entity. And within the College of Global Futures, we have 4 schools, the School of Sustainability, the School of Complex Adaptive Systems, the School for the Future of Innovation in Society, and a school that we just launched last fall, the School of Oceans Futures. So what this structure allows is you're looking at a mega container within which there are containers, but what these containers do is to force interdisciplinary collaborations. What do you do in a school for the future of innovation in society? There is no discipline that is the future of innovation in society, right? But what it also does is allows us to move quickly. So with Oceans Futures, we are a desert state. And so for us to be able to step into the ocean space in meaningful ways, we now have acquired the Bermuda Institute of Oceanic Sciences, allowing us to build the School of Oceans Futures. So it really is saying we need structures within which we can empower, engage, and mobilize resources, both from within the institution and from outside. And Alan, I think it's very inspiring when people from outside want to support universities. They need to see what the university is doing. They need to be able to touch and feel and be a part of what the university is doing. And sort of configuring this, it's not just conceptual, it's in practice, allows us to invite and bring in people from around the world, policymakers, business leaders, community leaders, funders, and others who then power this vision forward. But coming to the student experience, part of what these kinds of structures do for us is it gives enormous freedom to faculty to figure out how we can be innovative and where students can maximize their learning experiences by taking courses across the college and outside, by engaging with these partners. So it's really looking at how do you create containers for new ideas, new research, new experiences to evolve, and then giving the intellectual leaders within the institution the freedom to craft and define what those might be.
That's great, Minu. I mean, just a quick comment from me. I think we're going to have to hand back. But some great questions coming in the chat. They're probably questions that apply to all of the presentations today, so hopefully we'll pick them up. But what I've observed at ASU is, you know, when a bit of the curriculum, when a bit of the institution is engaging with a complex problem, you're going at the problem. You're not saying, well, how do we approach this as an engineer? How do we approach this as a physicist or as an artist or as a geographer? You're looking at the challenge. And when students then kind of get into that and realize that there is a need for knowledge and wisdom that's based in disciplines, they go hungry to the part of the school or to the expert, and they draw that in, and they're basically piecing together the inter or transdisciplinary team, the model, the approach to solve the problem. I think that's what's inspiring. That's what you're embodying as an institution. And I think there's a lot to be learned and shared. And that's what hopefully we're starting to do today. So thanks very much. I think I have to pass back to Ed, but I think there are a load of chat questions that hopefully we can draw in and we'll get to. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks so much, Alan. That's been absolutely fantastic. Perfectly on time as well. We'll just say as well that there was a question, I think, from Radhika around how does ASU focus on interdisciplinary approaches to climate education, suggestions, sharing practices. What I suggest is that those at ASU as well, we can share some resources and responses to that in the chat, and then there'll be extended time at the end to respond back to that specifically, because I think that's going to be a question that comes back round again on the subject of planetary health and around climate education, which is a huge theme across this whole festival. But before we do that, we'll pass next on to Bria McGrath, who will be able to introduce as well Rachel Sanderson, and take us into the next part of the presentation. Over to you, Brian.
Thanks very much, Ed. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everybody. My name is Brian McGrath. I'm based in Ireland. I'm a physics professor, formerly president of Dublin City University from 2010 to 2020, but now I'm privileged to be a senior advisor to President Crow at ASU. And I'm working closely with Minu in the University Design Institute, but also working with the College of Global Futures as well. The area I've been asked to look at this afternoon is engaging with internal and external communities. And the context is, I think it's widely recognized that the complexity and scale of the sustainability challenges facing us, excuse me, mean that partnerships and collaborations are essential. And so this is about partnering up with communities, both inside and outside the universities. And when I was thinking of what was the best example of this that I'd come across, I thought immediately of the University of Glasgow. I attended the Global Sustainability Summit there in late October, early November last year, and came away with a real sense of the scale and commitment of the activity at the University of Glasgow. So I'm delighted to be joined for this session by Rachel Sanderson, who's Deputy Vice-Chancellor for External Engagement at the University of Glasgow. And as you will hear from Rachel, University of Glasgow is one of the leading universities worldwide in tackling the grand challenges of sustainability. So I'm not going to say too much about this, but I'm going to let the expert, Rachel herself, give an overview for about 5 or 6 minutes of the work at the University of Glasgow in the broader context of sustainability and in the specific area of internal and external engagement. And then I'll follow up with some questions myself and then take questions that might come in from the participants here. So can I introduce to you Rachel Sanderson, Deputy Vice-Chancellor for External Engagement at the University of Glasgow.
Brian, thank you so much for that very kind introduction, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you all, depending on where in the world you're joining from. A real pleasure to be with you today. And as Brian has indicated, I am getting the chance to just say a little bit about the University of Glasgow and the work that we do in this space, I think, before being taken to task by Brian around some questions that undoubtedly you'll have around disengagement sphere. But for those that aren't already aware, the University of Glasgow was founded in 1451. So we are the 4th oldest university in the English-speaking world. So from ASU to the University of Glasgow, U of G, quite different types of institutions, but research intensive. We have a student population of around 35,000. We are a top 100 world university and a member of the prestigious Russell Group in the UK. But I think most importantly for today's session, I wanted to kind of foreground some of what I'm sharing by saying that as an organisation, we are very focused on the contribution that we make to the Sustainable Development Goals and to the broader sustainability agenda. So we do rank 19th in the world in the Times Higher Education Impact Rankings. In fact, we're second in the world for SDG 11 on sustainable cities and communities, which I think absolutely speaks to the partnership approach that we have within our own local and national context. And also, very pleasingly, we're 13th in the world in the inaugural QS 2023 sustainability rankings as well, which is just really to give you a little bit of context as to who we are and how we play in this space. But I did want to share with you that in 2020, we actually launched Glasgow Green, which is our sustainability strategy. And this was the culmination of significant internal and external consultation with our staff and student community, of course, but also with key stakeholder groups. It's a very ambitious strategy and it outlines a number of key commitments, including achieving carbon neutrality by 2030. And what I would say is that our student community have been a very loud voice in challenging, I think, the university to go further and faster. And I think that's very, very welcome. And I can speak a little bit more about the engagement that we have with students at the university in this arena. Again, though, the university, although a global institution and proudly so, we are also very much a civic anchor university. So taking a partnership approach with our local government is pivotal. So we have actually signed an MOU with Glasgow City Council. It means that it holds the university to account to actually providing support, to helping to inform policy decisions and to provide expertise to our local government. And we actually contribute to a citywide group, Sustainable Glasgow, where we absolutely help to collaborate on priorities such as active travel planning and also things like low carbon district heating networks. Internally, we've also adopted a sustainable business travel policy, which aligns with some of the ambitions of the city as well. And I should say that Glasgow City also has a net zero target by 2032. So we've absolutely aligned our own targets with that of the local context. The other thing that I did want to raise, because I think it's really important, is, and hopefully you'll all be aware of this, but in 2021, we were really privileged to welcome COP26 to the city of Glasgow and to our campus. And I think that provided a really unique opportunity to galvanise our stakeholder audiences and also to partner with government, industry, NGOs, and our local community. So over that 2-week period, we delivered over 200 hybrid, online, and in-person events. And we had superb engagement from within the university, from our own staff and students to those events, which were actually really led and driven by those individuals and different cohorts, but absolutely in partnership with stakeholders across every sector. And I think more important than COP26 itself, it's the legacy that it has left the university and the city. So we very much saw COP as the starting point for local, national, and international dialogues and collaborative action. And very much like ASU, actually, and I think it'll be interesting to see just how much commonality there is around the kind of the universities that are being showcased today. We've created a focal point for engagement via our own Centre for Sustainable Solutions. So the centre launched in April 2020. It has the very distinct mission of enabling individuals, communities, and organisations to act towards a sustainable future through education, research, and partnership. Really importantly, it doesn't have a locus in any academic unit. It is pan-university. It actually acts as an anchor for all of our sustainable actions and activities. And really, really importantly, it focuses on taking a systems leadership approach to finding solutions to the climate emergency with local stakeholders and beyond, I should say. So this is about finding interdisciplinary, cross-campus and cross-sectoral solutions to climate change. And through the centre, we've developed MOOCs on areas like climate literacy. We've created community of practices, but we've also coordinated major national bids to support responses to climate emergency. And hopefully, if time allows, I'll be able to say a little bit more about one particular project where we've been able to win a very competitive bid of £10 million to create a living lab in Glasgow to road test sustainability initiatives. We also have GUESS, which is our Glasgow University Environmental Sustainability team. And the reason I wanted to highlight that team is because it is entirely made up of highly motivated students who are actually employed by the university to support improvements to the environmental practice of the organisation. And through GUESS, we have a really privileged opportunity to engage with local schools, groups and societies. We've created opportunities for children to come on campus, to plant in our gardens, to learn more about biodiversity. But we also support the Glasgow Goes Green Festival, which happens in the city, and we work collaboratively with the other universities in the city and with other organisations to really promote sustainability and also show values in action, which I think is really, really important. So I know that I won't have much time left, and really what I did want to highlight is that in everything we do, we attempt to take a whole system approach. And that also means the way in which we're engaging with international networks and associations, and the lobbying and influencing that we undertake to inform local and national government. I think we absolutely recognise that solutions will require universities, government, industry and society to work together. And Brian mentioned that just at the end of last year, we hosted the inaugural THE Global Sustainable Development Congress. And that did bring representation from across the globe and across sectors to share insight and best practice around the SDG transformations of gender equity, health, education and sustainable cities. So I know that I will probably have run over time and I'm very apologetic for that, but I will leave you with just this one final word, if I may. We speak about world-changing Glasgow. That is really our kind of, our message to the world. We are world-changing Glasgow. But the emphasis is very much on being world changers together, and partnership is core to our DNA and approach to the sustainability agenda. And so really grateful and excited to have the chance to be with you here today, and to potentially explore opportunities for us working together in the future.
Rachel, thanks very much indeed. You got a lot in there, but you prompted some of my questions before, and I'll go to Ed in a few minutes. But you mentioned the importance of partnerships, and I suppose the complexity and scale of the challenges we're dealing with means we absolutely need to partner. And I think that concept of quadruple helix is a useful framework for us to think about. So we're talking about partnerships with civil society, with government, with industry and academia. So I'm going to ask you for some reasonably brief answers on those. But so how is the University of Glasgow engaging with civil society? And I recall seeing in action and reading about Gallant. So you might tell us about that. That seemed to me a very inspiring example of engaging with civil society in Glasgow.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. Gallant is something we're super excited about, actually, and I'm very happy to share information in the chat about our Centre for Sustainable Solutions, and particularly the Gallant project. It's in partnership with Glasgow City Council, and Gallant actually stands for Glasgow as a Living Lab Accelerating Novel Transformation. So it's funded by UKRI and NERC in the UK, and Gallant will basically use the city of Glasgow as a living lab to trial new sustainable solutions, and it will really focus on the co-benefits and actually the trade-offs for public health, well-being and the economy. So it is absolutely aiming to deliver social priorities against the UN Sustainable Development Goals, plus also, I think, remaining within the planetary boundaries of the 1.5 degree world. using donut economics. I don't know if anyone's heard about this, but we talk a lot about donut economics within the university now, and I'm having to do a bit of a crash course on that. But what's really exciting about this is that the Gallant partners come from across the spectrum of industries and sectors. So as well as partnering directly with Glasgow City Council, we're working with C40 cities, we're working with Deloitte, we're working with SEPA, the Scottish Environmental Protection Agency, and we're actually also working with museums and libraries and local NGOs. So it really is a project that will be for the benefit of civic society, but will actually be kind of co-produced and informed by the society that exists within Glasgow. So enormous potential, and yeah, we're very excited to see what we can deliver from that.
Great. Thanks for that, Rachel. I mean, it's also widely recognised that universities and their own civil society on its own cannot accelerate the change quickly enough, and that really we need the private sector, we need industry. And I want really to hear about some examples of what you're doing in that sort of direct engagement with industry at speed and attempting to scale solutions, which is critically important for us.
Yeah, and I think much of that is actually being directed through our Centre for Sustainable Solutions, and we have a number of research projects. Actually, there's one currently running with Corn Ferry, where we are absolutely looking to develop industry solutions and support industry to think through steps that they could be taking to support approaches to the climate emergency. So much of what we do tends to be in that research sphere, or taking a very evidence-led approach to contributing to industrial thinking, and also contributing directly to kind of government policies in this space. But we see industry engagement as absolutely pivotal, and quite uniquely now for Glasgow, because this is not something we've done before. We are actually developing a new innovation district. So it's called Glasgow Riverside Innovation District. And through that district, we are actually going to look for industrial tenants, for startups, to come onto campus to work directly with our academic colleagues and actually with our student community. And the sectors that we are engaging in are absolutely around areas concerning kind of public health and the sustainability agenda. So this is quite a brave new world for the university in terms of some of the work that we're doing at a strategic level, but really, really exciting.
Thanks, Rachel. Now there's loads of questions coming in from our participants, so I'm going to hand back to Ed temporarily, so to verbalise some of those and synthesise some of those questions that you can answer then, Rachel. So Ed, over to you.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Brian and Rachel. A few comments first. Marina, loved your remarks. So many concrete examples bringing the vision to life. And I think it really comes across, yeah, as she says, Glasgow being such a vibrant city, but you're really connecting the university to the city, which is fantastic. Firstly, just a quick question from Olivia. So what mechanisms have you used to overcome either sectoral, disciplinary or cultural barriers to collaboration towards this whole systems process?
Yeah, it's an excellent question, Olivia. And, as you will recognise, one that is not without challenge. But I think that was part of our thinking in having a Centre for Sustainable Solutions that didn't belong to one academic area. They could be honest brokers, and really what they are trying to do is to provide opportunities across the university and facilitate and support some of those opportunities, joining the dots, because we're a large research intensive university. We talk about interdisciplinary and interdisciplinarity, and we all recognize that that's a fantastic thing. In practice, it can be quite difficult to achieve. So one of the other things, as well as having the centre there, is a bit of a locus, the centre quite often are going out and matchmaking, and they're dealing with academics from different disciplines, understanding what those academics are doing and trying to achieve, and actually connecting them in with academics who are working in complementary spaces across our other schools, colleges, and research institutes. But one of the other things that we are doing, which I think is quite unique, is just last year we opened ARC, which is our Advanced Research Centre. And our Advanced Research Centre is really pointed towards bringing researchers, academics, clinicians, students together in a purpose-built space that really forces interdisciplinary thinking. So this is about bringing areas together that can help to support our major research priorities, which are all aligned to the SDGs. So, we're also thinking about the way in which we're funding and supporting research and L&T activities within the university, and creating the right physical environment to ensure that we're actually bringing some of those quite disparate groups together in a new way. It is all very new, and I've no doubt that our thinking will evolve as we bed much of this in. But we are thinking about ways in which we are supporting funding, creating particular posts and roles that will support some of this activity. And we have also fundamentally thought about even our estate structure to make sure that we can actually bring some of these different academics together. But lots, I think, still to do and to learn from.
And just actually one last question just for now, because it's a segue into Gail's conversation too with Angela. But there's a question from Sally around it. In what capacity are students hired and engaged by the university to work actively on sustainability solutions?
Yeah, very happy to share more information on GUEST because they are a group of students. I think we currently have 12. It's usually around that kind of 12 to 15 mark. Students that are paid by the university to come and pretty much hold the university to account. So, they are working across various areas, looking at ways in which we can improve our environmental sustainability, looking at policies, looking at processes, looking at ways in which we're engaging our student community in this. And, we have so many student clubs and societies. I think corporate social responsibility is front and center of our student community's minds in a way in which perhaps it wasn't to the same extent in the past. So they are fantastic. And, we have lots of students who volunteer in this space, but we really wanted to formalize something that actually is reported on and evaluated on an annual basis. So GUEST reports into our sustainability working group, which has senior leadership on it. And it means that there is a complete mechanism and governance structure in place so that actually the students who are being paid to deliver recommendations to the university actually are then given the platform to be heard, and to ensure that then those recommendations are being actioned by the university wherever feasible. But very, very happy to share more information offline if that would be useful.
Please do, certainly, Rachel. But that gives a great segue and transition into Gail's conversation with Angela, Provost at Ashesi University. So Gail, we'll pass the floor to you to take us through leveraging student voice.
Yeah, well, thanks, Ed. Thanks very much. It's a privilege for me to introduce Ashesi to university to that conversation. I came across that university first time that was 6 years ago. It was at WISE 2017, and Patrick Awa got the WISE award. So of course it was like, wow, and just in the middle of the screen, how impressive everything he was doing. So to my knowledge, that's the university is only 21 years old. And everything was built from scratch with a very clear vision. And I think that's to our conversation today, that's quite amazing. The vision and the values, so that it's about really creating new leaders for a new world in a way, because ethics is at the heart of everything that you do. And I found quite inspiring. I quote the mission of Ashesi University because it's like the charter of Arizona State University. It's not a piece of paper. It's some sort of a moral code and clear objective for everyone. The mission of Ashesi is to educate a new generation of ethical entrepreneurial leaders in Africa, to cultivate within our students the critical thinking skills, that's a good point, the concerns for others, that's another brownie point, and the courage it will take to transform a continent. So it's I mean, it's really about not only about studying and doing research and maybe finding a job. It's about having a mission and a dedication to transform the world, and that's clear from that message. And I was also quite inspired by the way that you introduce interdisciplinarity, or you force people to actually work on systemic problems. And I just give one example, which is a bit different from creating a center, but what I find quite inspiring, and that could be replicated elsewhere. You, if I'm correct, you created that role of a climate scientist that it has to that is consulting across all the curricula for the that you are providing, so that there is one person that is providing the science, so that everyone, whether they will become mechanical engineer or will go in business development or institution, etc., they will have that information firsthand from a specialist. And so it ensures somehow that everyone is aware of climate and can introduce that in their thinking. So I think that's quite an elegant, if I should say, proposition for having a climate scientist. I would say an Anthropocene scientist for all our questions, to make sure that this is cross-cutting in all curricula. And the third point that I found also very inspiring is how much you focus your all the learning in the learning by doing, and you you encourage the students to work on finding solutions to systemic problems, which is in a way the good way, as we have been seeing that with Glasgow before and with ASU. It's focus on the problem and then try to find a solution. And so then you will see how the disciplines can help you, but you don't have to work in the disciplines first and then to see what is that you can fix with that after. And so to turn it, the way that you turn it around, I think is quite inspiring. And I would very much like to have you now help us understand better how you actually do this in real term, and especially, and to me, there's a key question about finding solutions to systemic problems is about how do you actually mentor, how do you find people to mentor your students, and how do you actually create a curricula that is that able people, your students, to find those to engage into complex issues without losing face, because it's daunting, and at the same time tackling it with the current discipline that they have, the mentor that they have, to actually jump and ideate some solutions and work on it. I think that's I would love to hear from you on that.
Thank you so much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to share a bit about Ashasi University. So Ashasi is 20 years old, as you said. It was anchored in the hope that we would test a hypothesis that individuals, young Africans, would be cultivated in the desire and the concern for others. And so your question is, how do we do that? You know, Africa has many problems, very obvious and visible problems, education, sanitation, etc. But the one that is less visible is the lack of people who have a concern for it, or a generation that is cultivated to have a concern and then being equipped to make a difference. Over the COVID, we discovered something else. During the COVID, we conducted a study to figure out which of our students had the tenacity and the resilience to push through. And we found out that it was the students who had purpose. And most of the students who had purpose were fundamentally, or most of them were first generation students who had a focus. They came to Ashasi with a certain determination. Consequently, we have created a post-admission program that instills in each student a purpose even before they start the program. And so with that program, that's one of the ways in which we encourage students to be able to, you know, end up with solving a systemic problem. So with this program, we teach them different ways of thinking. And so they're taught systemic thinking, they're taught critical thinking, design thinking, data visualization, all these transdisciplinary skills prior as a way of helping them to transition into the university. We also introduced them to the SDGs and Africa's 2063 agenda, which is, actually you could map the agenda with SDGs. And then we tell them, or we ask them to identify a problem in their community. They do it in groups. And so using all these different ways of thinking, and the idea is we've tried it in the typical ways of process and approach, using these different ways of thinking, come up with a solution. And being very digital themselves, the assessment is for them to create a website, which is in itself a tool. So they are taught introduction to web design, etc. And then on the website, they come up with a solution. Now that's just one. What we have found is that the students then start knowing why they are here. That the purpose of them coming to a university is so that one student actually said, I used to think these problems were the government's problem. Now I recognize and I realize that I can come up with some solutions myself. Faculty have commented that the students who have gone through this program go from 0 to 60 in the shortest possible time. So we're studying and their progress to see how those who engage, the level of engagement with this kind of program and how they progress over the years. Now, prior to this, our typical program is designed in such a way that we have a leadership series course. It's in four sections, and they have leadership 1 is in first year, etc., right through. In leadership 1, they are asked the question, who is a good leader? Then in leadership 2, they are asked, what is a good society? Then what is a good economy? And then it culminates in knowing all of this, how can you serve as a leader? They are required as part of their graduation to identify a community and improve that community if they want to graduate. And so several of them, either in groups or in pairs or individually, will identify such a problem in any community of their choice. And they're required to work on that problem for 40 hours. I'll share 2 examples. There's one student who recognized that there's a sugarcane farm where the farmers typically would burn the post-harvest. And of course, that would bring about pollution in the air and so on. And they worked with the farmers to determine what else they could do with the post-harvest. And they figured out that they could convert it into fertilizer. The farmers are making more money from the fertilizer than the sugarcane. And then we have we have a little incubator. So this group of students have been engaged in the incubator, and we're trying to figure out how best to promote this in an entrepreneurial way, startup, and etc. And so I think, those are some of the things we do. There's another student who recognized that, plastics are strewn all over the roads, etc. And we have potholes. We have potholes because bitumen is expensive. But these plastics, she discovered, could be, combined with the bitumen to reduce the amount of bitumen used to fill the potholes. So she is dealing with 2 problems: sanitation, aesthetics, as well as infrastructure. So she has been working on the right viscosity and the right combinations of the plastic to figure out the level of duration, all of that. So these are some of the things that they are required to do. Recognizing that employability is one of the problems on the continent, we encourage all our students to go through an entrepreneurship course in the first year. So the very first year they are at Ashasi, first semester, they are taught the principles of entrepreneurship, their design thinking, etc. Then the second semester, they are given the opportunity to start a business on campus in a safe space where they feel we have a bank of funds that we raised ages ago. And so every student is given a loan during the first year, second semester to start a business. By the third year, about 35% of them are in the second or third iteration of the business. Some end up doing their capstone on their entrepreneurial business and so on. So the idea is that, you graduate and you either find employment or you build on the enterprise you started. Those with the most viable ideas are invited to be part of the incubator, etc. I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah, the chat is on fire. So yeah, it's not only that you answered the question, is that you propose a very this is very inspiring. So we can ask other questions related to that part. I have a good stock of it. You can also ask your questions directly in the chat if you have specific questions. There is I'm on the verge of branching that conversation, because at least I share that with the panel. Your academic field is the expertise of the impact measurement and the performance of universities or higher education. And so in the field of the transition, or how to transition higher education, I think that one of the key questions that we all have is that we are locked in a system that is totally obsolete. We are measured by the number of papers that we publish in journals that no one reads. I'm, of course, exaggerating a little bit, but we are not so much in line or grounded with the reality of the problems or the reality of the solutions. I mean, running an interdisciplinary center, I know how difficult our researchers, they complain all the time about the fact that when they do something which is interesting, they can't even publish, right? Or if it's really interesting, it's not even a publication. So I wonder, since you have such a grounded approach and you have such a clear objective, would you like to comment how your knowledge on this has an impact on the way that you see because at the same time, HEC is ranked as in the top 300 universities, etc. So you're still playing the normal game, but at the same time, you have maybe your own metrics or your own way to measure the success of your program and improve them. So if you have some comments on that, I think that would be quite useful for all of us.
I'd be happy to share. So in 2017, we started something we call the Education Collaborative. And the reason why we started that was a number of universities were approaching us to share ideas, etc. And so as not to, so as to optimize the time spent with the different universities, we opened our doors and we invited as many universities on the campus, on the continent, to join us, to share best practices, to identify each university's strength that they would mentor us in. Now, as from 2017 to 2022, 5 years later, we have engaged, at least 600 different universities and so on, but we have managed to form a collaboration with about, at various levels, over 100 of them. And throughout the year, we have identified 3 of our main problems: employability, ethics, and entrepreneurship, as well as, like you said, research, etc. And so by doing this, we are hoping to reach a certain number. Now, the metrics you're talking about, we look at the area in which there is collaboration, and then we identify how many students. So we have this pyramid effect that where 1 affects 2, affects 3, etc. And let me break it down. So let's say we work with a university to develop a career service center, which is, we have our own career development curriculum. We share, they adopt it, and then we literally figure out over the period of 6 months, a year, how many students use that service, how many of those students on graduation are employed. And so we are continuously measuring. Our goal is that in 10 years, we should have impacted at least 1 million students on the continent by, and then we're not the only ones who are providing this knowledge sharing. We've identified other universities that are willing to share and willing to have certain strengths, and they too. So if you map it out, as of last year, we had been able to impact, and we're not talking, just because you have 1,000 students and we add them all. No, we are literally making sure that we're counting who actually took that service. And so very conservative. We have reached 149,000 students. So we're well on our way to, by 2030, hitting 1 million students. Ashasi is also very intentional to recruit from all over Africa. Currently, we have at least 28 different African countries represented. The idea being that one country alone cannot transform Africa, but if the graduates go back to their countries, and then the networking, the ideas, the new knowledge, and so that's one of the ways that we measure our impact. What else can I say about measuring our impact? That's one of the clearest ones I can think of. But I can think of, I talked about the Education Collaborative, talked about the first year experience. Yeah, I'll be quiet and let you ask me another question.
So yeah, now maybe a very short one before I give it back to Ed. When we were preparing that, Ed told me that you also have an amazing scheme. You have a system so that you can provide loans for students so that they can start their own thing. I mean, that's quite amazing.
Yes. So let's say we raised through fundraising, we raised maybe $40,000 10 years ago. So we lend them not much, a certain amount of money to every student. Now, over the period of 6 months, they are required to develop and establish their own little startup business. They are to pay back the loan, and then the profits are theirs. But when they pay back the loan, it goes right back into that same pot, and we use it again every year. Some students pay back even more, and some don't pay back. But in the scheme of things, we are able to collect the bulk of it. And so it's the same funding that we use over and over and over again, in its core. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But this is also something very practical that is really inspiring. If there's no direct question everyone is like fascinated with inspirational program and all, but there's no direct question. So maybe Ed, I can over to you so for other questions or other round of discussions.
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much, Angela, for this. And I think that what you just shared there as well has planted a few seeds around this measuring and assessing impact of these transformation practices to really get a sense as well of the urgency of the planetary situation as well. I think that really comes through. I think this is going to be a bit of a stage now. We've got about 15 minutes before we'll close with a few next steps. To open up the floor a bit more as well, and hopefully get back to some of the other questions for panelists as well. But just while we're on this subject of really leveraging student voice and impact, which has been so perfectly presented by you, Angela, I think Maureen, you shared an example in the chat, and I am putting you a bit on the spot here, but around youth talks and gathering truly thousands of responses around youth challenges, issues that are being measured very effectively as well. I'm just wondering whether you could share in a minute what that is, and there is the link for further information as well to get this conversation going.
Yeah, thank you, Edouard. Thank you all for all these very interesting insights. It's very inspiring, I think. Thank you, Edouard, for talking about Youth Talks. So I'm the executive director of the Higher Education for Good Foundation. To be very transparent, it's a brand new institution, but the first project of the foundation is quite concrete at that point. We decided to launch a youth consultation worldwide. And the reason why this youth consultation is innovative compared to other similar initiatives is mainly because we ask young people open-ended questions about their dreams, their concerns, what they would like for the future. We also ask about their renunciations, like what are you willing to give up to build the future you hope for, that kind of question. So asking open-ended question is easy. What is a bit difficult is to make something with the data collected, right? And a couple of years ago, it was not possible for us to do something with this data. Now we know how to do, so that's the reason why we decided to launch this consultation, again, asking open-ended questions, and we analyze all the answers thanks to artificial intelligence and natural language processing. So the consultation is ongoing right now. I will put back the link in the chat if you're interested. The consultation will last until end of May, and the results will be shared through a dynamic online platform, you know, with data visualization showing by question, by country, by socioeconomic level, the consensus, the dissensus, the main verbatims for each cluster. And we link all that with videos because we also conducted a lot of interviews worldwide. We also allow young people to record their voices, and all these data again will be analyzed and linked and showed with the data visualization. So it's a first. It has never been done before. So if you are interested, please reach out to me. I would be happy to tell you more about that initiative. But also you have to know that, I mean, the data will be used by institutions around the world, the better it will be for us, because it's really like a social, I mean, it's an initiative for the society as a whole. So please feel free to reach out if you are interested. I'm happy to share the data and to even make you partners if it's an option. Thank you very much, Edouard.
Many thanks, Maureen. Super. What I just wanted to go to next for a question, and maybe Radhika actually, because there's so many comments that I'm trying to scroll back through for the verbatim of the question. I didn't quite grasp it, but it was around interdisciplinary climate education curriculums, and I think it speaks to each of the speakers. I'm wondering, Radhika, if you're able to ask the question verbally. If you're unable to, I'll continue to try scrolling back through. And as I say that, I think I've got it at the top, so I can go for it now.
Perhaps Ed, I think Rachel is still on the call. As she is. I mean, that whole notion of having programs that all students get that sensitize them to climate change, and certainly I know University of Glasgow has developed a MOOC around climate literacy. But maybe hearing a bit more about that and hearing maybe from other contributors how they've addressed that issue. I think we heard from Asheshi in terms of having the climate scientist who mapped across all curriculums, which sounds like a fantastic idea. But maybe Rachel can talk a little bit about the success and the approach taken in Glasgow. We might hear from others then.
Thanks, Breen, and I hope that's okay, Edward. I was gonna jump in, but I thought, well, I'll wait to see if I'm invited. So thanks so very much, Breen, for doing so. I think the point around the curriculum is a really, really key one. We've actually just developed a new learning and teaching strategy, and within that, we're looking at how we, one, decolonize our curriculum, but two, look at areas that support introductions to sustainable development goals. And we have established through our Centre for Sustainable Solutions a whole bank of micro-credentials, so MOOCs in essence, that can be taken by our internal community, but also our external wider community as well. So we have MOOCs on climate justice, on communicating climate change, on teaching sustainability, and also on the circular economy. And I think one of the interesting things that we are still considering is how much of these micro-credentials should form part of a compulsory curriculum for all students. But separately, the Scottish Government have funded an upskilling initiative. And so they have, on a competitive basis, given funding to universities to develop micro-credentials to help upskill those in employment. And a lot of what we are doing is around that sustainability agenda as well. And there's huge appetite for programs that really help to inform and develop thinking around responses to the climate emergency. So we've had quite a lot of success in this space. We're also running a number of programs through the Future Learn platform as well in this arena. But it's something that we absolutely see as being kind of mission critical, that, we are looking at, and I think, that comes back to this sort of, whole systems approach. We are looking at ways in which we can help to inform our research priorities, but also our learning and teaching activities. And the MOOCs has been a really great way of us being able to expedite some of this pretty quickly, I've got to say. So many of these programs were only launched last year. We've already had thousands of learners successfully complete these micro-credential courses, and we're now looking at how we further develop that over the course of this year as well. So again, I think there will be lots of good practice across other organizations on this call, but I think this is an area where we can absolutely share insight, because I think this is only likely to grow for Glasgow.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Minu, as well, did you want to build on that too? Because I think there are a few examples, and it connected Radhika's question for you earlier.
Sure. Our approach has been to infuse climate change content into everything that we are doing. So as we looked at the structures of the Global Futures Lab, the College of Global Futures, all of the schools within the College of Global Futures integrate perspectives on global climate change into what they do. And then through the courses offered by the School of Sustainability and others that any student can take across the institution, students have a way to dip in and figure out how climate change impacts the things that they are most concerned about. We are moving in the direction of a sustainability course that all of our students will take at entry level. But I think the way students are thinking about this is they need to sort of understand climate change in the context of the things that they want to do. And so, sort of infusing it into everything and not treating it as a separate thing has been the way we have been testing our path forward. Again, I think there's just not enough content. I think we just need to be able to put as many things out there in as many easy to consume ways as possible. The other thing that ASU is doing outside of our degree programs is we have something called the Learning Enterprise. This entity at the institution produces educational programs, courses, content that are credentials and badge-based, so non-degree granting tools and platforms. That's another way to get out sort of easy to consume, low investment ways to learn these things. And then in our programs, really get it across as many disciplines and courses as possible.
Many thanks, Minu. There are a number of comments, I think, reacting to that as well in the chat, and some other examples. Thanks, Mary Rose, around campus-wide sustainability strategies with Penn State. There's also, I think, this question around scaling as well, looking at the smaller localized examples with Schumacher and College of the Atlantic, absolutely fantastic example as well. And then seeing how this kind of translates on a larger level. And so I think connecting those dots is a big question. I'm conscious just of time, and there's been so much already shared. What I will say is straight after the call, you'll receive a link with the full transcript, the chat notes, everything that you can search through the video, because I know there'll be lots of things you want to follow up on fresh. But I'd love, if possible, to open up first to any suggestions or responses to the question of, we want to continue this space moving forward into 2023. We want it to be useful. There are, I think I've counted from the registrations, I think around at least 40 institutions represented in one way or another. Does anyone have anything that they'd like to share in terms of how this space, this community, could be most useful over the course of 2023? Because there's a huge opportunity to be able to build really meaningful global community around this. So if anyone does have a response to that, either put it in the chat or raise your hand. But I'll give a couple of seconds to reflect on that beforehand. And as you're thinking of that as well, just in some of the comments as well in the chat, very much around transdisciplinary engagement, and how actually there's a question around how you can admit for the transformative universities, really looking at game-changing curriculums, what might be the criteria and the best ways to admit students? Does it work in the same way? Are there any differences as well? So if there's any suggestions on that or responses to that, then do add that into the chat as well. Otherwise, Alan will you have your hand up.
Yeah, just a comment, a brief one, Ed. I think we've talked a bit in the preparation for this as well about institutional habits. One of the founder of Dartington, the project that I lead, was Dorothy Whitney, who had helped start the New School for Social Research after the First World War, thinking we really need to rethink higher education. How could this war have even come about? How could this have happened? And so, there was a fundamental attempt to rethink what a university was. I found it striking that when Hannah Arendt wrote her paper, the crisis in higher education in the 50s, she was at the New School. A school that was invented to reinvent higher education had also fallen into habits. And I think there's something exciting about the conversation here about relatively new institutions reinventing what it is to be a university, or even really significant scale universities like ASU kind of saying, let's fundamentally change our form. And Glasgow as well, trying to tackle fundamental problems. But it does seem to me that the question of partnership needs to be much more fundamental. I remember Carl Gustav Jung saying that in any real encounter, both parties had to be prepared to be fundamentally altered. And I just wonder if there's a conversation here where we could learn how to get out of this habit of just going back to business as usual, because that's what's killing us.
And I think there's a tremendous pressure as well when you're leading transformative practices or moving towards transformative practices, that I think it's important to have that sense of support and accountability and insight to continue on that journey as well. Gail, go for it. And then on to you, Manu.
Yeah, a quick reaction to Alan, because of course we agree. I think what is different, yesterday on another session, François Gay was saying that 100 years ago, Piaget was doing exactly what we are doing, trying to reinvent school through, because realizing that it was just not fit for purpose. And what we are trying to do is just to going back to that time where the Piaget, the Montessori, the Freinet were rethinking school and university system. One thing which is fundamentally changing is that today we have students that are in the streets. And more and more, and we have people in the workforce that realize that what they're doing, there are more and more people that realize that what we're doing is nonsense. So I think there is a push from society which has no precedent. So my hope is that this time, with that pressure and that positive energy too, we may change on a larger scale. Mili, what's your take?
I couldn't agree more that we need to really go after some fundamental changes. There is a lot of light touch, easy to do things, and I understand we all have to start somewhere. But from ASU's experience, one of the things that has allowed us to make some of these fundamental changes is really deep partnerships with entities very different from us. So let me give you an example. We have a partnership with Starbucks to educate baristas at Starbucks. So for all of those people who work at Starbucks who need a college degree, Starbucks pays, ASU offers online programs. I think we had over 10,000 people graduate in December from Starbucks. But that partnership forced us to think about how quickly we can design our online courses, our delivery capabilities. And now we're working with other corporate partners to bring our access mission to work with them. But that relationship with Starbucks has evolved into the Starbucks Center for the Future of People and Planet, when our Starbucks folks are working with ASU faculty and students to really think about evolving sustainability practices within their organization. So really deep partnerships with external entities are really great to change habits of universities, because they put pressure on us to move faster than we think we can move. They bring resources and they bring access. And I think that pressure from outside really has allowed us to make some fundamental shifts. So I'm a great advocate for universities seeking partners of every kind outside the institution.
Thank you, Minu. Rachel, did you want to just rebound back as well, and some closing thoughts from you? It's been the first occasion that you've been able to join one of these conversations, so thanks so much for your time, but also, yeah, any reactions would be super.
So much reaction. I think, it's been a really insightful and inspiring hour with you all. I feel like I've learned a huge amount from listening to colleagues and the work that they're doing. I think there's a massive amount of complementarity across what we're doing, despite being very different organizations. And I think that speaks to kind of the mission and values and purpose of higher education. And I do absolutely agree with some of the points already made that, for us to really make a difference, it will require a fundamental shift in what we do and how we do it. And I think we cannot underestimate the importance of our student community in this, and how we're developing the next generation of leaders who are going to have to take responsibility, I think, for having to make amends for some of the mistakes that we have made along the way. And I would come back to how I finished, which is really just about the criticality of partnership and the real opportunities that exist for us to engage civically, but also with industry, with government, with NGOs, and massively importantly, with other HEIs across the globe. And, the approach that we are taking at Glasgow is we have fantastic expertise, incredible world-class experts and researchers. But no one university, no one government, no one sector alone is going to be able to bring to bear the changes that are now required. And it's going to take concerted efforts from all of us. And, that is really now what we're focused in on, how we can collaborate to make a meaningful contribution to responding to the SDGs. So yeah, I feel that I have taken so many notes from today's meeting, lots of things that I want to feed back to my own team in Glasgow, but I think it's a really important conversation that will be fantastic to continue. So many thanks for the opportunity to participate.
Thank you, Rachel, and we'll pass from interviewee to interviewer. Brian, your thoughts, please.
Thanks, Ed. I won't repeat what's just been said, but I think the key words that came across consistently this afternoon in an excellent session are, purpose, partnerships, interdisciplinarity, systemic approaches. All of those came across consistently right across the examples. But at the end, I do think we're still faced with a fundamental dilemma, and Rachel pointed to it to some extent. All of us are motivated by transformation in education and transformation in higher education in particular. We all know things could be an awful lot better. But at the same time, we are faced with the fundamental existential challenges facing the planet. So the word urgency, to my mind, we didn't, tackle often enough in this session, and urgency and how we scale solutions. And Rachel mentioned it. There's how do universities and other actors and players come together to make what needs to happen quickly enough. And I think that issue there, I think we need to go back and talk about some more. But some fantastic contributions all afternoon. I think so much to learn from and to bring together.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Brian. Thanks to all the speakers, to you all for your time as well. I think we'll close on time as well, to get you off and set off on your morning, evening, lunch, whichever time it is. Thanks to each of you for your time. There's been so many ideas, questions, comments in the chat as well. We'll be gathering them, and as I said, you'll receive them very shortly later today. And then we'll be getting back in contact because we want to continue these conversations over the course of the year. We still want to test the model of bringing in and presenting inspiring examples. So any of you as well that would like to share more and would be interested to be involved in that, then please do send a mail over. But you've already shared to me your details in the registration too. So we'll be getting back to you. But with all that being said, I hope as well that you have a fantastic rest of the week, notably at the festival. There's still another 300 events, so I'm sure there'll be a few things to get stuck into. And with all that being said as well, I'll share in the follow-up just a list of some of the emblematic ones on higher education too, and let you enjoy the week ahead. So thanks to you all for your time, and see you again very soon.
Thank you very much, everyone. Such a great pleasure to see you all.